Today, we're going to dive into something pretty wild, a really radical new philosophy for humanity. It's all drawn from a text made up of 100 powerful concepts, and let me tell you, it's a vision that challenges pretty much everything we think we know about society, reality, and even our own purpose. And it starts with a bang. We're not talking about small tweaks here. This is a proposal to completely overhaul civilization. So, what does that even mean? Well, the way of God seems to suggest a universal natural law that guides everything. And chaos management? That sounds like a system for navigating the world's complexities, but without all the rigid structures we have now. It's a very bold starting point, so let's get into it.
All right, here's our game plan. We're going to start big with the grand vision for society. Then we'll zoom right in on what it means for an individual. What's our purpose? From there, we'll get a little weird and explore the deep secrets of reality itself. And finally, we'll bring it all home with a practical guide for the soul.
First up, a new vision for society. This is where we look at the philosophy's major critique of our current systems and check out some of its truly radical proposals for a new world.
So, what's the diagnosis of what's wrong with the world today? Well, on one side, this philosophy says the problems are things like having way too many laws that just stifle human potential, and closed borders that lead to stagnation. And the proposed solutions? They're just as direct. A do-nothing government, a global AI alliance to handle all the logistics of resources, and, get this, complete freedom for all people to move anywhere on Earth.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting, because it challenges one of our most fundamental modern values. The philosophy flat out rejects democracy, calling it a pursuit of the mediocre. Instead, it pushes for a Superman philosophy. The idea is that whoever is responsible has the final say, but they also have to bear all the consequences. True accountability, it argues, comes from one person taking on the total weight of their decisions.
Okay, so how do you possibly manage a society that's this free? The philosophy proposes one single powerful tool: total transparency. Just imagine if nothing could hide in the shadows. Not in government, not in business, not even in our personal lives. The idea is that full exposure is basically the ultimate disinfectant for all of society's problems. It's such a simple concept, but the implications are just profound.
This, of course, brings up a really crucial question. If we're going to completely remake the world around us, what does that mean for each of us, for you and me? What's our purpose in this brand new landscape? So let's pivot from the big picture, the macro, down to the micro.
So let's explore that. In this next section, The Purpose of Human Life, the philosophy lays out a really clear framework for understanding what a human being is and, what we're ultimately here to do. At the very core of this view of humanity is this idea of a spiritual hierarchy. The text defines 5 types of people, and each one operates from a different center. It starts with the brute, who is driven purely by instinct. Then it moves up through the common person, the mortal, the worthy, all the way to the saint, who is guided only by spirit. It's presented as a really clear path for human development. And this developmental path also totally redefines what we should be chasing in life. The philosophy outlines 3 kinds of wealth we should seek, but the order here is absolutely critical. First, you seek wealth of the soul. That's your inner character, your virtue. Second, wealth of the spirit, your connection to a higher purpose. And material wealth? That's a distant third. It's a complete flip of how many of our modern cultures operate. So here's the bottom line. When you strip everything else away, this philosophy states that the #1 fundamental purpose of life is the direct experience of a happy, joyful, free, and blissful existence. Everything else, your career, your status, your education, all of it is secondary to this one primary goal. So what does a person who actually achieves this state look like? Well, the text lays out 8 conditions of a perfect human nature, and it really paints a picture of profound harmony. It's someone who reveres a higher power, feels zero need to compete with others, and maintains this deep inner peace no matter what's happening around them.
Now, this all sounds pretty amazing, right? But it all rests on some really fundamental assumptions about the world we live in. So we have to ask the biggest question of all. What is the nature of the reality we're all experiencing?
And that brings us to maybe the most mind-bending part of this whole philosophy, the secrets of reality. This is where we get into the metaphysics, the fundamental laws that this entire system is built on.
Okay, prepare yourself for a huge idea. The text says that the very essence of our world is an illusion. But, and this is key, it doesn't just dismiss it as meaningless. Instead, it argues that an illusion that lasts for 1 billion years is so vast and so persistent that it gains its own profound meaning. It matters. And underpinning this whole illusion is a perfect mathematical balance. The idea is that the total sum of all the positive and negative energy in the entire universe is always zero, always. This means for every act of giving, there's an equal act of receiving. For every gain, an equal loss. It's a universal law of total equilibrium.
This principle of balance plays out in what the text calls the 8 heavenly secrets. You can pretty much think of them as the karmic laws of reality. For example, more giving leads to more receiving. Makes sense? Or more possessions lead to more troubles. A stronger ego takes you farther from the way. And my personal favorite, the more shortcuts you take, the longer your journey. They're presented as just these unchangeable laws of our existence.
Okay, let's bring all of this abstract, cosmic philosophy right down to earth. In our final section, we're going to look at a practical guide for the soul, transforming these huge ideas into actual advice for our daily lives.
So the first step is to really understand where our pain comes from. This philosophy points to 18 different factors, and this chart kind of visualizes some of the real heavy hitters. Things like selfishness, greed, envy, and just constantly comparing ourselves to other people. These are seen as the primary roots of our suffering.
And the practical way forward is explained with this really powerful metaphor, the garden of the mind. The work we have to do is twofold. First, you have to actively go in and remove the weeds, all those negative qualities like envy and anger. And then you have to consciously plant and nurture the flowers, the good stuff, like truth, love, and kindness.
And the stakes for doing this work? Well, they couldn't be higher. This quote really emphasizes the immense weight of our present moment. It suggests that every single thought, every word, and every deed is being recorded, and it's all shaping our future existence. The responsibility and the power to choose rests entirely with us.
So after exploring a brand new society, the purpose of life, the nature of reality, and a guide for the soul, we're left with one last, massive question. Within this entire framework, what is truly possible for a human being?
And the answer is just as breathtaking as the philosophy itself. In the universe, nothing is impossible. The only limits that exist according to this final thought aren't out there in the world. They're in here, inside us. The only limits are our own perception and the transformative power of our own minds. It just leaves you with this incredible idea that our potential is truly, fundamentally, limitless.
What a journey. A radical vision from start to finish. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into a new philosophy for humanity.